Hello, welcome to the self-learning podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 26, Class. Prior to the French Revolution, the term class was used in a general sense, as in the writings of Adam Smith, Madison, and other scholars of the 18th century. Several of them used it interchangeably with group or a state. It was in the 19th century that class as a category came to be recognized as a relevant concept in explaining social theory, ideologies, social movements, social structure, and social change. The heuristic potential of class was particularly important in the context of social stratification. In fact, class was identified as one of the most significant bases of stratification in the society. Several sociologists have proposed theories of class structure and explained the phenomena of mobility between class positions. In this unit, we begin with the meaning and concept of class and class society, and then explore the sociological perspective on class and the theoretical approaches crucial to understanding class and classless society in sociological writings. We also discuss the issue of struggle between the classes and mobility between classes. Now let us turn to the topic, the concept of class. According to Oswaki, the following three assumptions are common to all perceptions of class society. The first one is classes constitute the most comprehensive groups in the social structure. While classes are differentiated groups in society, they are not independent of each other. It is not possible to speak of one class without reference to other classes. The second one is division of people into classes concerns social status connected with a system of privileges and discriminations not determined by biological criteria. This implies that each class is accorded certain privileges and discriminations that have a bearing on its social status. Now, the social status in this case has nothing to do with sex or any other criteria that are biological in nature. Evidently, some classes receive more privileges. They occupy higher status in comparison to those who receive more discrimination and occupy lower status. The differentiation and disparity constitutes the basis of social stratification and determines interclass relations. The third one is the membership of individuals in a society social class is relatively permanent. This does not in any way rule out the possibility of transition from one class to another. What is stressed here is the fact that such transition is made by some individuals only. Often one remains in a particular class throughout one's life. Against this backdrop, it may be noted that while some classes are treated as superior on the basis of social status, privileges, and discriminations, others are treated as inferior. These socially relevant privileges and discrimination may be of different kinds. In a specific sense, however, the concern here is with wealth and power. This is notwithstanding the fact that Marx identified the privilege of exploiting other man's labor as the fundamental basis of class differentiations. Against Again, each other occupies a distinct place in the class hierarchy. The awareness of the place of one's class in the class hierarchy is referred to as class consciousness. Class consciousness is usually entwined with class interest and class solidarity. The other characteristics of class society is social isolation, that refers to social distance and absence of close social contact between classes. One needs to understand that the social isolation or lack of interaction between classes fosters class consciousness and class solidarity that perpetuates class structure. In fact, Marx asserted that the consciousness or awareness of class interest and feeling of class solidarity are the guiding basis of identifying a group as class. People belonging to a particular class exhibit distinctive behavior and make use of specific vocabulary or pronunciation or speech. This implies that, among others, behavior and speech also sets one class apart from another. These differences are also differences in access to wealth and power, together with social distance and isolation of one class from another, deepens cleavages between classes. As cleavages deepens and the class distance increases, conflict in class interest emerges and conflict between the classes becomes common. There are two fundamental perspectives from which the concept of class may be understood. The first is the nominalist perspective that is identified with the American school of thought. The second is the realist perspective, and that is identified with the European school of thought. The nominalist perspective treats the class as an ensemble, a conglomeration of people who share common status. The emphasis is on the social status of each individual in terms of respect that others bestow on him or her. In the words of Aaron, each person enjoys a certain position of esteem or prestige, which results from the totality of situations in which he exists, and each situation can be analyzed from 3 points of view: in relation to property, occupation, and power. Surely the place of an individual in the social domain is subjective and dependent on the judgment of the other people. There is, however, agreement on the notion that different individuals hold different positions in society. The position of the individual in the hierarchy, as mentioned earlier, is a play of three elements: relations of property, occupation, and power, upon which his or her position is determined in the class structure. It may be understood at this stage that no single element determines the class to which an individual belongs. The emphasis rather is on the sum total of social considerations. Individuals with similar prestige and status belong to one class. The realistic perspective, on the other hand, treats the social class as a real ensemble that is determined by the material facts and by the collective consciousness of the people. Two ideas emerge from this approach. One is that a class is characterized by collective unity, which is real, and the second is that people belonging to a particular class share collective consciousness. Let us distinguish between the nominalist school and the realist school more clearly. The nominalist school lays emphasis on individuals and interpersonal relations, while the realistic school lays emphasis on collective realities in explaining class. The nominalist school postulates that people who have similar status or social prestige constitute a class. While social status changes, the class of a person also changes, which means that it is easy to move from one class to another. There is no conflict between classes because the limits and boundaries of classes are not rigid and certainly defined, and more importantly, classes are not associated with the seizing of power. In simple terms, power is held and exercised by upper classes while the workers are never able to use it. The realist school, on the other hand, asserts that the conflict of power is inherent in the relations between the classes. This is due to collective unity and collective consciousness of people belonging to each class. The people of a particular class seek to foster the interest of its own class that are often in conflict and those of others, and in doing so, each class tries to consolidate its own position in the society. The nominalist school upholds that the collective reality which the realistic boast of does not exist or hardly exist, or if it all exists unequally, while the realist school emphasizes that by ignoring collective consciousness in explaining class, the nominalists have missed the essence of what constitutes the class. The distinction between the American concept of class and the European concept of class proposed by Aron roughly corresponds to the hierarchical view of class and the dichotomous view of class proposed by Oswaki. The hierarchical view of is associated with the nominalist position, and the dichotomous view is associated with the realistic position. Now let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the self-learning podcast.